Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Prevention Voices Washington webinar series on Legislature 101. Today, we're going to be talking about the 2022 interim. My name is Megan Moore. I'm at Kitsap Public Health District. This is our first webinar of the year, and I am feeling stoked about it. First, what is the interim? It's just the time between legislative sessions. It is the time to rest, recuperate, and then do some critical activities that will make you more successful during the next session. The three main goals to accomplish during the interim are building relationships, be proactive about policy, and to fix any internal processes so you know how you can participate. Here's a to-do list for the interim of things that you should add to your list. First, learn about the legislative and rulemaking processes. This is an excellent time to prepare yourself for the events that happen during session, which happens so fast. There are a lot of resources out there, including the legislative website, but if you need individual or coalition TA, please get in touch with us. Next, build relationships. This means with others who are like-minded, with those who you see as opposed to your opinion, with local policymakers, with legislators. Just start meeting people about your specific policy interest. Next, proactive policy work. This means getting involved in the policy conversations. Sometimes that means helping to draft a bill. Sometimes that means just putting those ideas out there to people who can make a change. And sometimes it also means requesting that rules are opened up at an agency. That's being proactive. On the rulemaking side, participate in the rulemaking process. We're going to talk about this in greater detail in another webinar and a little bit later. Just know that it feels disconnected, but it is connected to this legislative process. Importantly, know where your line is drawn for action within your own agency. Have that conversation with your leadership. Say, my grant encourages me to educate about how policies will impact our community, including outreach to all levels of policymakers. What am I allowed to do as your employee representing this organization? I'm going to talk about this in more detail later this interim, but just get those conversations started. All right, this is the big picture for the 2022 interim. It's so important to look at the big picture and not just focus on what's happening in the substance use prevention world. First, policy conversations are already on their way, but they are happening as all these other things are also happening. First being the state did a huge redistricting process. They do it every time we do the census. And there have been changes made to legislative districts. So you may not have the same legislators that you had last session. It's really important to know who your legislators are. We're going to take a quick field trip over to the leg.wa.gov website. Remember that, leg.wa.gov, so that you can see where to find your legislator. On the left-hand column here, click Find Your District and put your address in there. It's super easy. It'll just pop up who your 2 representatives and your 1 senator are. It may be different from last session, and so that's why we're talking about it. Speaking of changes to legislators, the elections are happening this year as well. The primaries are in August and the elections are in November. All of the House of Representatives is up for re-election, and half of the Senate is up for re-election. So there's going to be a big shakeup this year. Know who is running for office in your district. I'm going to link the Secretary of State page where you can find this information. Just under this YouTube video, you'll find that link. You cannot participate in campaigns on your work time, but it's still important to know who could be your future legislator and what they stand for. All of this is happening amidst the bigger picture, which is the funding landscape. The legislature passed the capital gains tax in 2021, and since then, it has been going through the courts to determine if it is constitutional or not. If it's repealed, the state is going to be in a huge hole. They're going to need to find funding, and of course, prevention dollars are a prime target. We need to be able to say why these funds are critical for our community. If asked which bucket of funding is more important, you should be able to say, all of this funding is critical to address substance use and promote youth mental health. These funding sources all tackle the issue from a different angle and they work together. If you remove one piece of funding, services to build the whole youth could be in jeopardy. Please memorize this statement, add it to your list of prepared follow-up answers if you're in a meeting with a policymaker. Even if this question isn't brought up, it's still important to defend prevention funding as a whole. And lastly, it's important to know that past legislation from the previous session is not done. And this is where the rulemaking piece comes in that I talked about. All of the legislation that happened during the 2022 legislative session is now going through the rulemaking process at its respective agencies. So basically what rulemaking is that during the legislative session, policymakers say this law is going to change, and we pass that, we approve that. And then after that, the agency has to decide how are we going to implement those changes. And they get into the weeds, they get into the deep details. For prevention, this often happens at the Liquor and Cannabis Board. So rulemaking is not lobbying, even if you have a specific ask. You are the subject matter expert and they need your expertise. So they are going to ask for specific language, specific science related to your field. It's important to stay engaged with the rulemaking process. I'm going to post a link to the LCB rulemaking update page in this in the YouTube list below. Oh my gosh, that was so much information, and there's so much to do in the interim. Please don't feel discouraged though if it is just like so much, it feels like too much. Even focusing on one of those to-do items will better prepare you for the 2023 session. As always, if you need technical assistance, please reach out to me via this email address. I'm so excited for this interim. I'm so excited that we're on the same team. See you soon.